to speak to all of you today. We have a very interesting guest speaker for you this afternoon. I would like to introduce you to Lorraine Bishop. Lorraine is a film producer who specializes in commercial ad creation. Welcome, Lorraine, to our Gradlinc webinar.
Thank you very much. Very pleased to meet you and to be talking to everybody. I can't see you, but hi.
Yeah. I was just telling Lorraine, on the back end for all of our audience members, that I think that she has such an exciting job, and I'm so excited to really dig into this afternoon. I guess the starting point then would be to ask you, Lorraine, what is it that you studied in order to get into the profession that you're in today?
Well, the interesting thing from my career is that I did not study to be doing what I am doing today. I studied to become a teacher, which I did for a couple of years. I then had my own clothing label and shop. And from there, I went into wardrobe design, we call it, on commercials. I did that for a number of years. So I started off in the creative department of advertising, and then took myself out because I got a little bored and became a producer. Started producing in production houses and then became an agency producer. So I can explain the difference if anybody's interested, or we just take it from
Please, go ahead. I'm sure our audience and I would love to hear it. So please explain the differences.
So the differences are a client, whoever they may be, employs an advertising agency. So the clients have a marketing department. They have brand teams that deal with briefing advertising agencies to create a script, a story, a campaign for them to go on television with. Television is still a prime motivator for advertising. And of course, today, everything added on to that. All the digital media, stills, those billboards that you see on the highways, the radio campaigns, it all forms one big campaign in general. And I, as an agency producer, work with the creative agency to help to create the visuals. Yeah.
All right, that's very cool. That's very exciting. You mentioned that you started your career with teaching, and then you sort of pivoted, to where you are now. Can you mention any skills that you took from your first career that help you with your current career as a commercial ad designer, producer?
Not really. It just seemed to be something that rolled out for me, something I pursued. I got bored with one thing, so I went on to another thing, which is where I've actually stayed for the last number of years, because I find having a hand in creating the visuals is what really interests me. Although, as a producer, one is also highly responsible, in fact, entirely responsible for how the client's money is spent.
Yes.
And that's quite a task. I do not have a background in that, but I can do it. I know how to do it. So what I'm trying to say is I don't know that there's a formal way in. There is a formal way into marketing. Yes. There is a formal way into being a creative in an agency, to be able to take a brief for the client and give them what they want. Producers is a more kind of, I don't know, organic thing. You can do it or you can't. And the prime purpose of an agency producer in commercials is not the creative aspect. It's actually the money aspect. Although I come from a creative background, so it's quite nice for me. I'm able to participate a little bit on the creative level. Not that they always want to hear what the money person has to say, but
yes,
just gives an added depth.
Yeah. Oh, that's exciting. So Lorraine, tell us, how is a day in the life of Lorraine Bishop as a film producer in the commercial ad space?
Well, a day in the life is just one small part of the process, because making a television commercial, be it 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, or 60 seconds, which is usually the maximum, because the media spend, once you've made it, which might cost anything between $1 million and 10 million, the spend to put it on all the media, most especially television, is where the big money comes in. So it's a long process. The brand team of the client will brief the agency. The agency often takes months to come up with a concept that everybody's agreed upon. And it is once that concept is agreed upon that the agency producer gets involved. In other words, takes the money and briefs it out to production houses. Now, production houses are the ones that carry out making the visual for the agency and, of course, in the end, the client. So it's a three-way process, and it's quite an arduous process. It's quite stressful. Very often there's not enough money to make what has to be made, so one has to find ways around it. And there's a lot of liaising of the agency producer with the production house producer, who is the one that's handling the agency budget and has to make sure that her team, being predominantly the director, is following due process, in that they're not coming up with ideas that can't be done on the money. The money is all important. So an idea has to be very cleverly adhered to. It's not a free-for-all. By the time the director gets it, it's been in a long process of approval, both creatively and financially. So a day in the life is, it takes weeks, sometimes months, until you finally get to actually shooting it, which is usually a very long day or 3 days. You might start at 5 in the morning and end at 10 at night. And there are all sorts of rules and regulations governing how long you can shoot. So there's a pre-production process, which takes a couple of weeks, which is casting the people that are going to be in the ad, finding the locations, dressing people, dressing the locations. And that is a process that is agreed upon all the way through by the client and the agency. We then get to shoot, which is probably the most fun part. And thereafter is the editing, which is another, depending on the complexity of the idea and the complexity of the post-production, can take anywhere between 2 weeks and a month, depending on what you post-producing. If there's a lot of computer graphics, it takes longer, it's more expensive. If it's simpler and it's just a performance piece and you're just editing a lovely performance, it's much quicker. But the editing itself is a process that also has to be managed by both producers in terms of time, in terms of, you know, you have shot the piece and now you have to edit it into 30 seconds, and you don't have an unending amount of time to do this. It's all being budgeted, it's all being structured, it's all being scheduled, and you have to work to that. And if either the client or the agency become difficult, they feel the director hasn't delivered, things can become tricky. So each day is an adventure of its own. Time is sort of the essence on the one hand, and panic is very much part and parcel of everything that goes down. You can be fielding calls at 10 o'clock at night. You can, and there are all sorts of things that go into the shooting, in terms of insurances, in terms of if you're shooting outside, there's a special insurance. It's quite expensive. If you shooting with famous people, you have to take another kind of insurance, all sorts of things. So it's a complex, interesting, and fairly stressful process, and you got to love it, otherwise you can't do it.
Yes, yeah. I think what you said earlier on, that you know, it's definitely not boring. There's many things that you have to do on a daily basis.
Yes.
What I'm hearing, Lorraine, from you is that there's a lot of elements and individuals and sort of, yeah, elements and individuals involved in the production process. So for the question then, for purposes of my audience, would be, you know, is it possible for our students and graduates to study specific things, to get involved in specific elements, or would you say that it would have to be a whole kind of scenario?
No, I think there are different aspects in making a commercial, and a lot of graduates go into the marketing side of it, which
Yes.
means, yeah, so you become a specialist marketer, which means you know your brand, you know what to brief the agency, you know what's expected. You know, being an agency creative is another thing, and that is certainly something that you do need to, you can't just wing it. You do need to study at a specialist advertising school like the ACA or the, yeah. And marketing as well. There are definitely courses that are geared towards brand advertising. Producing is there are courses in the film school that you can do, and at the ACA that you can do. A lot of times it's kind of knowing somebody or knocking on a door and going, I want to be a producer, and you come in at a very junior level. So there are different ways, but that doesn't happen in a brand team, and that doesn't happen to be part of the creative process in an agency. So that is very specialized, and you definitely have to study it.
Okay, all right. We have a question from one of our audience members. I'm just going to pull it onto the screen. The question is, what are good skills that you need to become a commercial producer?
I think you need to be able to handle a lot of stress. You have to be able to skate between the client and the agency, because you are kind of front in the line of saying yes and no. You have to be very skillful in keeping, and it sounds terrible, but it's true, in keeping the creative team in check, because people go completely crazy. They want everything and anything, and there are limitations. You also have to be very good with time management, and you have to understand money and budgets and how and where they work. But, you know, it's not all just a thumb suck. There are rates for what we call on-camera artists. There are rates for music. There are usages. depending what platforms you're going on to.
Yes.
If TV is the first medium, there's a certain percentage, all the others follow suit. It's being able to wheel and deal to a degree within the parameters of preferred rates and contracts. You have to be able to manage contracts. You have to be able to recon all the money afterwards. So if you've spent 5 million Rand of a client's money, you have to be able to reconcile that afterwards. You have to keep track of all your spend because you dare not go over a client's budget, because the client will not accept responsibility for that, and you could therefore be getting your agency into trouble. So you've got to be good with money, you've got to be good with time, you've got to be good with people.
Okay, all right, that makes perfect sense. It's a high stress, sort of high pressure environment.
Yeah, you know, within a month or two, you're dealing with a huge amount of money, and that's the bit of money before it even goes onto television or onto the digital platforms or onto the social media platforms. And certainly with television, you have a very stringent timeline. You have to be ready on the date that you say you are ready. For social media, not important. You can submit a day or two before. It can be longer than 30 seconds. It's not so stringent. Whereas television is absolutely stringent. If you're delivering 30 seconds on the 2nd of March, you deliver 30 seconds on the 2nd of March, and there's no ducking and diving. And
yes.
if there's a huge amount of consequence. So it's a very responsible job. You have to be on your toes all the time.
Yeah. Speaking of social media, Lorraine, we have another question from an audience member in Tando, and she is asking, what is the impact of social media platforms and digital content creation on the film industry, given the fast-paced era of technology that we live in?
Well, I mean, I think you've kind of answered your own question. It's hugely important. And everybody now that does a television ad will also do, well, they usually don't do a separate thing for social media or digital. It's you, and again, it depends. You know, social media can just be, and digital as well. There can be a cut down or a lengthening of the prime idea, but they are terribly important. But it also depends on the client. Certain clients and certain demographic of people are still, television is still the prime focus, but nobody would dare these days to just do television. So yes, the impact is huge, and usually when we do what we call usage rights in Tando, we do it for TV, we do it for digital media, we do it for social media, we structure packages for all that's needed. But absolutely, it's very important, very important.
I mean, we're all living in an era of TikTok and Instagram these days, so all sort of platforms must be considered, along with the most prominent one, which is television.
Sure. And those platforms are considered in terms of who you are advertising to.
Yes.
You know, who's au fait with TikTok, who's good on Instagram, who's better on YouTube, what is the general demographic of your audience? Yeah, definitely, absolutely. It's not something I do. That's a strategic, that's part of the brand team's strategy. So generally an ad agency also has a strategist in place, and they will kind of work out what mediums they need, how long they need them for, etc. So,
okay. All right. It's all very exciting. There's a lot of questions for you today, Lorraine. We have one more. I'll pull it onto the stage. This is a good one. I'm also quite curious. Does your job involve a lot of traveling as a producer?
Yeah. It can do if you're working in the right agency with the right accounts. You can travel the world. I have done shoots in all over Africa, which I absolutely loved. I've worked in Uganda, Kenya, Ghana, Dubai. I've been to the Ukraine to shoot when they weren't at war. I've shot in Russia. It very much depends. These days, the budgets are not as big as they used to be. So traveling is kind of limited. And also, there is a lot of traveling between cities and there is a lot of traveling within the country. But, our advertising certainly these days is quite local centric. So there is not all that need to be shooting all over the world for local products. It just depends what you're shooting and what the storyboard is and how, I hope that makes sense. It's quite a big question.
No, it makes perfect sense. I am curious now. A question from my side. Where's the most exciting place that you shot at, country-wise?
They're all exciting at the time when you're there. I suppose the one that for me was the most fascinating was Russia, because under normal circumstances, I would not go to Russia. I would not have the opportunity or the need to go to Russia. The strange thing is we shot a commercial for Fanta with a Russian agency, but we shot it in the Ukraine. And we arrived at 3:00 in the morning in Moscow, went straight into a meeting with the agency. That was when I was in the production house, and lo and behold, we had pizzas to eat.
Oh, wow.
Not any exotic Russian food. So, but I think Moscow and Kiev were very, very exciting for me. And I'm very lucky that I had that opportunity.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, yes?
No, it's all exciting. I love Kenya, love shooting in Africa. It's all exciting. Once you're in the middle of a job and it all starts to happen, your military campaign exercise all comes to life, and it's great.
Yeah, and I can imagine the energy is rising as it's all like sort of like moving forward, and the whole team is buzzed, and it's a whole vibe.
Absolutely, very exciting. Very and those deadlines hold you to ransom. So it is exciting. And I've said again and again, stressful. But you know what? You learn to deal with the stress otherwise.
You do. I mean, I can imagine you have to be a passionate person if you are in this industry. So then you have to learn to deal with the amount of pressure that you're dealing with. Lorraine, I have a follow-up question for you from a South African perspective. So that, we all know that there has been a lot more production coming out of South Africa, a lot more production houses, movies, ad space, and so on. So students who would be interested in pursuing this career, what is in your opinion, what is the career growth prospect in South Africa?
You're talking about the wider film industry that I'm not really au fait with, but of course there's a lot of stuff being made for Netflix, for Showmax. There are feature films being made. It depends what your interest would be, how you would approach it. If you want to become a director, you go to film school. There is a very good film school now called AFTA. When I started out, people came up through the ranks. There weren't film schools as such, which there are now. So it depends what part of the discipline you're interested in. As I said, if it's marketing, or if it's creative agency, or if it's directing. It's kind of a hard question to answer, really. It just depends what your focus is, and from there, you would direct yourself to the right institute or way of getting into the industry.
I see. And then the opportunity flows from there. So once you establish where it is that you need to be, then, you know, the possibility of growth of it comes naturally.
Yes, I think so. I mean, yes, of course. You know, you enter an ad agency as a junior creative copywriter and you end up as an executive creative director. So of course there's room for growth. And
Yes.
you know, the brand teams within the clients are also there is a hierarchy and you work yourself upwards, definitely. Absolutely.
Earlier on in the interview, Lorraine, you also mentioned the importance of a network. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, you know, I can't really elaborate on it, but if you I'm finding it a hard question to answer. Did I say network?
So let me help you out here. So basically, when we were talking about how you got into this industry, you were talking about the importance of having a network to help you establish yourself into the industry.
Well, I think in terms of that, I mean, always, if you know somebody, it's an easier door to knock on. You know, hi, this is what I want to do. I'm not sure that it works so well these days because people are being skilled in marketing and directing and producing. But, you know, like in everything, it does help to know somebody and to be able to say, you know, I'm interested in marketing. Can you? Yeah. So, yeah, I think I'm not answering this very well, but clearly, if you know somebody who can help you, who can give you a leg up, definitely it helps.
Yes.
And, you know, a lot of people start with an internship. You know, you go knocking on doors, you become an intern, and from there things spiral if you're lucky and if you're good at it.
Yeah. Yeah,
If you're in
it's
the right
interesting.
place.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned internships because that was one of my follow-up questions for you. Are there a lot of internships available in the industry as a whole?
There are, and again, it depends at what level you want to be. If you're interested in working in a production company, what you would do is get a list of every production company near you in your city, and you would actually speak to them and say,
Yes.
I'm interested in becoming an intern. Either that or there are crewing agencies that I think do help people to become interns. If you want to become an intern in a creative agency, same story. You have to find out who they are. You have to get in contact with the HR department. And yeah, I don't think there are millions of internships, although it's a big industry. It's a big money-making industry in this country.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a bit of pushing, it's a bit of chance, it's a bit of luck.
Yes.
Depends where you want to place yourself. Yeah.
All right, I would love to continue this conversation for the next 7 hours, but unfortunately, we just have a minute. So I just want to take this opportunity, Lorraine, once again to thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening today and talking to all of us and our audience members here at Gradlinc. This has been absolutely fantastic and very, very informative.
Thank you very much. I hope so. I hope it's been interesting, and I hope somebody's inspired to join the ad industry.
Absolutely. For our audience members, if you have any questions, please reach out to the Gradlinc team. We're happy to assist you with any kind of connections. And I hope everyone out there has a lovely Monday evening. Thank you so much, Lorraine.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
All right. Bye.